All right.
Cool.
Okay. All right. All set. Okay. What's up, Dolphins fans? This is your latest edition of Dolphins Deep Dive. I'm Chris Perkins, your Dolphins columnist. That's David Furones, your Dolphins beat writer. And look, I've been saying this for a few weeks now. Dolphins fans should be excited about the offseason. There's big things happening in the early stages. First week of free agency has already passed. It appears the Dolphins have prioritized defense in this first wave of off-season transactions, right? You got Vic Fangio, your new defensive coordinator. You got the all-pro cornerback Jalen Ramsey. You got the inside linebacker David Long Jr. All of those are major defensive acquisitions. And we're also hearing that Andrew Van Ginkel is likely to return to the Dolphins. So that's a good addition. We'll see what happens with Melvin Ingram, another pass rusher who is a free agent. But we're going to talk about this defense. We're going to talk about what we know about the defense from these early stages of the offseason and how different it's going to look. Offensively, I'm not a big fan yet. Now, I'll tell you this. It's early in the offseason acquisition process, and I know that, so there's not a big thing. There's still more free agency. There's still a draft. So more moves will be made, but if you've been reading what I'm writing, you know I'm not too thrilled with the backup quarterback situation, and I thought an upgrade was needed at running back. Still plenty of time to make other moves. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about whether the Dolphins address right tackle, backup left tackle, left guard, tight end, quality depth. And then where do the Dolphins rank in the AFC East? Even with Aaron Rodgers' expected arrival to the New York Jets, where are the Dolphins in this division? Let's dive in. All right, so Furones, let's talk offensive moves to this point, because I'm not thrilled about the backup quarterback situation with Mike White and Skylar Thompson, not because of the players, but because of the lack of experience. You have very few December and January wins in that quarterback room now. And when you have a team with Super Bowl expectations, you kind of need something at the quarterback position. So your thoughts on quarterback? Are you happy? Do you think the Dolphins are done? Is Mike White and are Mike White and Skylar going to battle it out for the number 2, or could we see somebody enter the picture even if it's in November if there's a Tua injury?
Well, I'll put it to you this way, Perk. Would you like the system better if, considering that you were able to get a Jalen Ramsey because of money saved with moves like Mike White at quarterback, saving a few $1 million against the cap, doing that, being more economical at running back by bringing back Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. So if you put it that way, then okay, well, you were able to grab a Jalen Ramsey, and David Long is also a nice value addition at linebacker. So you were able to make some of these other moves when you were really pressed up against the cap, actually over the cap at one point, and then now able to do this because you were making some financial decisions at other positions. And I know quarterback is an important one. You're concerned about Tua's health. He hasn't been able to play a full season, and this last year it was the concussions. But so obviously backup quarterback is going to be a priority. But I kind of do like the competition standpoint of Mike White, Skylar Thompson. They'll be able to battle it out. They're going to make each other better. They're gaining more experience. We saw some of Skylar Thompson toward the end last year. Obviously, he wasn't even at 50% completions in that game against Buffalo in the wild card round, and didn't score a touchdown in that Jets game. Had them competing, managed those games well enough to compete in a playoff game at Buffalo in a tough environment, and then also go and get you a win against the Jets that was spearheaded by the defense and obviously special teams at the end. So you'll have some competition there. These guys will continue to grow. I always like the local kids coming back to Miami, so I'm a little bit biased in that regard. I know you were a fan of Teddy Bridgewater, so you could have had both with Teddy Bridgewater, the experience and the local aspect of it. But if you're not going to bring back a Teddy, then I do like bringing back another local guy.
By the way, I mean, I don't know the answer to this, but is anybody better at bringing back local quarterbacks, right? Because I can recall Jake Rudick, right? Jake Rudick, Brad, who was the
Brandon Doughty.
Brandon Doughty, the North Broward kid, right? And then we had Brissett and Teddy Bridgewater, and now we've got Mike White. So hooray to the Dolphins, man, for supporting the local quarterbacks. I mean, that's just off the top of my head. There might be more, so at least hooray to them for that, right? I mean, good deal.
And that's that South Florida isn't considered a hotbed for quarterbacks. They're considered a hotbed for all the other positions. Maybe not so much the big boys up front, some of it, but mostly it's skill position players that South Florida is known to produce. And then quarterbacks have come along in recent years. But don't get fans started with that, because another local quarterback is named Lamar Jackson.
Yes. I was going to say we're not going down that road right now. We'll do that later, maybe. Probably not, actually, but so back to the backup quarterback thing now, and I understand what you say about you that enables you to get Jalen Ramsey and some other guys, and you know me, I'm a big proponent of win as many ways as you can. Don't put it all on the quarterback. So I'm a big fan of them improving the defense, because that gives you another way to win, gives you another way to control the game, gives you another way to take pressure off of Tua. But that gets us to the running backs, because, Furones, I'm old and I'm old school. So I like defense and I like run game. So I like what they've done with the defense. The run game thing, Mostert and Jeff Wilson were effective last year. A lot of it has to do with the play calling, and that's on Mike McDaniel, and he'll improve. He was a rookie coach. He'll improve from that standpoint. But I like that dominant game-breaking, clock-eating, ball control, other option-style running back, because it does so much for the play calling. It does so much for the quarterback play. You make that defense going against the Dolphins make a choice. Do we put 8 men in the box and stop the run and risk the one-on-one coverage with either Tyreek or Jalen, or do we keep somebody deep and keep getting hammered by this run game battering ram? And that's what I want to see the Dolphins get to. That's why I love Derrick Henry. I've always loved Derrick Henry. I know that wasn't realistic for the Dolphins this year. But I love a dominant running back, and I think that it does. The reason that I want the running game to improve is to take pressure off of Tua. I think there's so much on Tua's plate right now, and getting the defense, that's a wise move. Improving the defense, Fangio and Ramsey, that helps Tua. That helps your defense, but that also helps Tua. So I like that. But to me, my number one priority this offseason, and I wrote this, would have been running back. It would have been improving that running back position. And look, you weren't going to get Zeke Elliott. Tony Pollard from Dallas gets franchised. Josh Jacobs from the Raiders gets franchised. Who else? I'm slipping name. Who else got franchised? But anyway, Miles Sanders.
You said Barkley. You said Jacobs.
Saquon. That's the other one. Saquon. So look. The Dolphins, Miles Sanders was probably the most realistic kind of blockbuster, splashy running back that they could have gotten. But I just would have liked to have seen more of a game breaker or I guess dominant running back at that position. And look, here's the other thing, that if your starting quarterback, Tua, is a health risk. So why not have something to help up the backup quarterback as well as the starter, right? So a great running game would really benefit if you have to go to a backup quarterback, and I just heard on ESPN today, Last season, 68 quarterbacks made starts in the NFL last year. That's a record. And so, look, I just believe in making the quarterback's job as easy as possible. That's why I would have upgraded the run game.
Yeah, that's a shocking stat. I mean, that's more than 2 per team. We know the Dolphins participated in doing that, getting the more than 2. That they were one of the teams that did have 3. And I hear you on a lot of those aspects. I mean, could you imagine you pair Derrick Henry, whom the Titans' offense was centered around, and then it opened up so much when Ryan Tannehill had it with A.J. Brown, and then it was just that 1-2 combo of that you can pound them with Derrick Henry, and then all of a sudden A.J. Brown has a one-on-one matchup. Oh, could you imagine that if it's you have to choose between Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? And I mean, against the Dolphins offense, it'd be impossible to go 8 in the box because you have 2 threats of that caliber on the outside. So I hear in that regard, but also, I mean, you did get production from this tandem. You just didn't use it that much. Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, 4.9, 4.7 yards per carry, respectively. Maybe I flipped them. I don't know. One of them had 4.9, one of them had 4.7. The point is, they're both very close to 5 yards a carry in their time with Miami. Wilson actually averaged a little bit more in the first half of the year with San Francisco. And it's the same system. It's the familiarity with Mike McDaniel. I just think it's really good value that at what's their cap hits? It's a 2-1 for Mostert, 2-2 for Wilson. I mean, when you compare that to what it would cost to get a big-time running back, compared to the value that you do get out of them having just that continuity, that chemistry, familiarity with one another, and with Mike McDaniel's system, the wide zone rushing scheme. And I think it's a great move to go ahead and keep the continuity at running back.
All right, let's go to O-line. Brandon Shell is still out there. They brought back Kendall Lamb and Jaron Christian at tackles. You've got to get a backup left tackle, and the Dolphins know that. You can get one through the draft. You can get one in free agency. Maybe Kendall Lamb wins the job. Who knows? But the Dolphins know that, so I'm not pounding on them about that. But you do need to establish backup left tackle. You need to solidify right tackle. You need to solidify left guard. But I'm okay with where they are on the offensive line right now. Really, the backup left tackle is a priority. The starting right tackle is a priority. I'm actually okay with Austin Jackson and Brandon Shell battling it out for the starting job. If you want to go get somebody from the outside, that's fine. I know that's a crucial position because it protects Tua's blind side. But, my general offensive line stance is this. It's hard to be good at all 5 positions, right? I mean, it's hard to be good at all 5 positions in the secondary when you're in the nickel. So I think if you have a 5-man unit, if you're good at 3 of those positions, take the money and run. Now, ideally, you're good at center, left tackle, right tackle. In the Dolphins' case, you're good at center, left tackle, right guard. So the problem is you've got to protect Tua's blind side. But I really think we'll see with Austin Jackson. I think that they would be good enough between Austin Jackson and Brandon Shell protecting Tua's blind side. If Tua gets injured, then the left tackle is the blind side protector because you've got 2 right-handed quarterbacks. But I'm okay with it. If they don't make another major offensive line acquisition from free agency, I would be okay. You could draft somebody. So I'm not panicking about where they are offensive line-wise.
Well, yeah, you're bringing a guy like Dan Feeney, so interior offensive lineman, and that gives you depth, some competition potentially at the left guard spot. You did let go of Michael Dieter, and Dan Feeney can play center, so he could also be Connor Williams' backup center. So you're talking about the left guard spot now. You have Liam Eichenberg, Robert Jones there, still coming back. The couple of youngsters from 2021. Liam, obviously a second-round pick, and Rob Jones, an undrafted guy who made the team that 2021 season and has been very serviceable whenever he's been called upon to go in. So I've always liked him. So now you bring in a guy like Dan Feeney, and that gives you some positional flexibility on the interior of the offensive line. Can play left guard, center, right guard if ever either Robert Hunt got hurt or he had to slide out to right tackle, then you could slide him in there. Whether it's at left guard, you mentioned how much competition now. Liam Eichenberg, Robert Jones, and even Lester Cotton, who started a playoff game. He was the starting left guard in the Miami Dolphins' last playoff game, the only one since 2016. So Now coming off the practice squad and getting elevated for that game, he has that experience as well. So now you can develop some of those guys, and then right tackle, right. That's still kind of the focus right now. So you took care of interior backup linemen with Feeney, who could potentially compete for it, but then now right tackle. Brandon Shell's an option that I do like if you want to bring him back. I mean, he was very serviceable whenever he had to come in. Austin Jackson, you hope that he can get healthy because we didn't see it last year. Just we know the struggles that he had his first 2 seasons, also with injuries, and then now really the injuries hurt him. Where neither game that he started was he able to finish. He ended up on injured reserve after each start that he made last year. So you hope he gets right, and then you can hopefully finally see him at that right tackle position and see if he can thrive. But between him, if they bring back a Brendan Shell, what about maybe a George Fant if you continue with the New York Jets pipeline over to the Dolphins this offseason? That's already been very popular here. So some options, I think. Jermaine Eliminor still available. He spent some time briefly at the start of 2021, that preseason, and then didn't make it, but then became a little bit of a starter here, especially last season with the Las Vegas Raiders. So his stock has risen, and he's still available last I saw. So some options. They'll probably be looking at that this week and then determining one of them's got to be either Brandon Shell or one of those right tackle options. I think you got to bring in if you're the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think so too. When you look at wide receiver, River Craycraft back, Trent Sherfield gone. Not a whole lot needs to be done there. And then at tight end, you're looking at more of a blocking tight end. Mike Gesicki going to New England. Eric Saubert coming in. So you made a move there. So I think you're okay at offensive line, wide receiver, and tight end for this early stage of the offseason. Again, there's more moves that can be made in free agency, and you've got the draft. Anything that tight end is that most likely a free agency? Enough if there's another move there, which I imagine there will be. You've got Saubert, Durham Smythe, and Tanner Connor. Why am I doing a passing motion? I guess because he's a receiving tight end. That makes no sense.
Converted receiver, yeah.
I know. Anyway,
is he the future Gesicki in this offense?
That made no sense. Anyway, so you've got those three.
We know who you're targeting if you're dropping back at quarterback. You're targeting Tanner Connor.
Right. I know.
Your mind immediately went to it. I'm throwing to him.
This sign is not good for tight ends on this team. That's Mike Gesicki, right? That gets you nothing. Well, it gets you a $4.5 million contract.
It looks like a little 3-yard dump off into the middle of the offensive lines.
Exactly.
I don't know how far that was going.
That's all I can do. So, all right. So, tight end, the draft or free agency, or does it matter? How do you address that?
Well, I think already getting Eric Saubert as a free agent, a guy who can block, a guy who has improved as a receiver. He has these huge hands. That's been noted about him. So he's been improving as a pass catcher, had his best receiving year last season, also can contribute on special teams. So we know after moving on from Sethan Carter, which he was injured the whole season, unfortunately, after that concussion from the week 1 game. But sort of that role that they envisioned maybe at the beginning of the year of having that backup tight end who can block, who can also contribute on special teams. But Saubert, I do like his prospects to improve as a pass catcher as time goes forward too. So maybe you get something out of him. We know the team like Durham Smythe, John Embry, tight ends coach. I mean, he essentially had him as the starting tight end because Gesicki didn't really start and actually had some of his career lows in snap counts in games. Even going back to his rookie year, Gesicki had some lower snap counts this year than back then under Adam Gase when Gesicki was just a rookie. So we knew there was some movement that was going to be going on, and it didn't really fit, didn't really mesh. In the receiving core, did he mention the guy they brought in from the U? Braxton Berrios,
I was just thinking I need to kick myself after the men's and women's U basketball teams are in the Sweet 16, both beating Indiana. They get Braxton Berrios, and I leave the UM kid out. These are big times for the Canes. Shame on me.
Yeah, basketball school now, I guess. We have mentioned women's teams beating Indiana and pulling off an upset against a 1 seed. You got to love that for the Lady Canes. But I mean, Braxton Berrios, bringing him back to Hard Rock Stadium, where obviously he was a senior on that 2017 team that started 10-0, was up to number 2 in the college football playoff rankings. I think a lot of UM/Dolphins fans locally are going to love to see him back. Actually, it'll be interesting, him against Jalen Ramsey in practice, maybe a little bit, because they used to go at it. They had some years in common in college there in that Miami FSU rivalry, and Jalen Ramsey kind of gave the Canes the business those years. Until later in Braxton's career, then the Canes started to flip the rivalry. So at the end of Braxton Berrios' career, then Miami went on a win streak there. Now it's back to FSU winning the last 2, so not looking great there. But I love the way Braxton Berrios could potentially complement Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the outside. Tyreek Hill tweeted Wes Welker 2.0 when he saw Braxton was signed, and I wonder why, right? But it's also great because you got a return specialist too now in him. So you have a guy that can handle that. Cedric Wilson is still under contract. So I think the Dolphins were probably looking for a trade possibility there. But maybe they still will. Maybe they still can find something. But now you have Braxton Berrios who can be committed to those return roles. So you don't have to go put Raheem Mostert in on kick returns and then have him do that and then go carry the ball in the first play, the offensive play, the very next snap. And then also Cedric Wilson, who had to kind of learn the punt return role sort of on the fly. So now Braxton Berrios can handle that. So I do like that combination. Bringing River Craycraft back. Unfortunately, Trent Sherfield didn't work out. He's going to have to go to Buffalo now, and the Dolphins are going to face him 2 times a year, maybe 3 when you consider the playoffs as well. So that'll be fun. That'll be some fun times, and having Braxton back will be a thrill for Miami fans.
Yeah. Hey, was Eichenberg? Eichenberg was on that Notre Dame team that Berrios' UM team beat, wasn't he? 2017.
What was that?
Wasn't Liam Eichenberg on that Notre Dame team? Him and Mike McGlinchey?
Oh yes. Well, yeah. So Liam would have been a little bit younger. Maybe he was a freshman then.
Yeah. 1920. I think.
Yeah. Anyway. Right. Yeah. Because 2021 draft. Yeah. So I believe he was a freshman.
He might have been.
Yeah.
Might have been. All right. So that's our offense, and again, plenty of time to do major work on the offense. Let's go to the defense and our next segment and assess some of these defensive moves. Obviously, look, Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator, Jalen Ramsey, the all-pro cornerback, huge acquisitions. They elevate the defense to a new level. We'll see if they might be more of a read and react defense under Fangio. We know Josh Boyer loved to attack, and he loved to do it through the blitz. I think Fangio is going to use the players' natural abilities a little bit more as opposed to forcing pressure. He'll see what the players' natural abilities lead to, where the Dolphins have advantages, and kind of go off of that. But David Long Jr. at inside linebacker, great athleticism, and a 3-down linebacker, a guy who has 4 interceptions the last couple of years. So this is a guy who can stop the run, and we know the Dolphins were very good at stopping the run last year, the run defense. But one of the things that the linebackers needed to improve for on this, and you can pick up on the David Long acquisition here, is they needed more athleticism. They needed to be able to defend the pass. You get David Long for 2 years, $11 million, I believe it is. A great value, right?
Yeah, I love the value of 2 years. I think maybe 10, or maybe it's up to 11 with some of these contract details. What initially gets reported, it ends up then you end up realizing it's a little something else when the full contract details come out. But obviously, yeah, there's always incentives and stuff in these deals. But yeah, I mean, he has the potential to be an exceptional pickup. Just the fact that he can do a little bit of both. There's some metrics that show that he really stuffs the run well, and he can defend the pass. I know he had one of the best quarterback ratings against. Now, I think some of that is kind of inflated by getting those interceptions and not giving up some touchdowns, which I know he did give up a high completion percentage as well with passes targeting him. So that'll be sort of something that you look into when you actually end up just watching how it all fits in Fangio's scheme. Will it end up looking like the way Jerome Baker or Landon Roberts kind of looked in coverage a little bit last year, and Duke Riley as well? Or will this be a considerable improvement in pass coverage from the linebacker position, which we know the Dolphins needed, covering running backs out of the backfield, and then also getting athletic because scrambling quarterbacks really hurt the Dolphins last year. And also another note on the linebacker core, Jerome Baker's contract, his $8.4 million base salary became fully guaranteed Sunday. So Dolphins now on the books for that. Now there was speculation over if it could be in the plans to move on from him before that figure became guaranteed. But now Dolphins are in the books. If they do want to move on from him, find something else, whether it's in free agency, then trade is still a possibility. But maybe Fangio does like having Jerome Baker and pairing Baker with Long, which you think the two athletic linebackers, that could work well for what he wants to do. So now that's what you're looking at as the inside linebacker combination, and then Duke Riley coming back as well to give you some depth. So and obviously we see the edge rushers that they have. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see now how this comes along. David Long, I do like the pickup.
What about the loss of Landon Roberts? E-Rob, the team's leading tackler with 107, although Baker was second at 100. But a team captain, a tone setter. I mean, this too is Mr. Intensity. And so, but at the same time, you can't stay with the same personnel and expect different results. So somebody had to go. It was E-Rob. I like him personally. I like his intensity, but this is an upgrade as far as athleticism and getting a 3-down linebacker. Will his leadership be missed? Yeah, but you got Jalen Ramsey, you got Vic Fangio, so I think it's a even exchange. Or any thoughts on Landon Roberts being gone?
Yeah, I mean, he was more of a Flores, Josh Boyer guy. He was with them in New England, so he came over 1 year into Brian Flores' tenure leading the Miami Dolphins. So, I mean, a secure tackler might play a little stiff at times, and I think that's what the Dolphins wanted, is to get more athletic. So he wasn't as quick, and but yeah, the loss could be felt in terms of leadership, having a voice to the defense. That standpoint, was a captain. And they did keep Duke Riley, so some continuity there. I think Fangio likes a little bit of a way he thinks he might get out of him, so he must feel he can do something with Riley. But E-Rob, obviously, I mean, just from the captaincy standpoint, the leadership standpoint, that's going to be missed. And just the way he can set the tone at the line of scrimmage, he comes in, he hits hard, so right. He can intimidate opponents from the run game. So we'll have to see. The Dolphins are strong up front when you think of Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer and their ability on the defensive line. So maybe some reliance on them to keep up the run defense, because that was a plus last year. Among many things that didn't go well, the run defense was something that was strong, especially the traditional run game against running backs. A lot of the run game that didn't work or that the Dolphins didn't defend well was when scrambling quarterbacks got to them. And it kind of inflated some of the stats, the rushing yards against them. But even then, the Dolphins were still a high-end rush defense per game.
Okay, so we'll go to the pass rush real quick. Andrew Van Ginkel, all indications are that he will come back to the Dolphins, and of course he'll be joined by Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips and Emmanuel Ogbah. So you've really got a strong.
Malik Reed, the addition on Saturday.
Linebacker. Yes, Malik Reed also. So you've got a very strong unit there. What are you expecting from these guys? Because I'm expecting this pass rush unit to take over games. And we're going to talk about the secondary in a second here with the additions of Deshaun Elliott and Nick Needham is coming back and Jalen Ramsey. But I'm thinking that this defense has the potential right now to be as good or better than the offense. And I know that's going to startle people, but this defense is really, really loaded. What are your thoughts on the pass rush right now? Because I think it's potentially dominant.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't too long ago that the defense was the face of the team. I mean, just going back to not this past year, but the one before, and even at the start of this past season. Remember that week 1 victory, Mike McDaniel had the big quote that was, this is still the defense's team, something to that effect, the way the defense led the team to victory in that one. And then also week 3, that win against Buffalo at home, then defense was still leading. So, Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that the defense was up there, and then the things kind of fell off, and there were injuries that led to it. I think, yeah, Boyer's blitzes became a little bit predictable at times. Never having Byron Jones last year, Xavier Howard not really being himself with those groin injuries, all those factors, and then Brandon Jones goes down, Emmanuel Ogbah, he goes down. You never really had him at his full ability, even those early weeks when he was available. He didn't really look like his 2020 and 2021 versions of himself, but now I think, there is a potential for this to come together, especially under Vic Fangio, because, I mean, a lot of this just goes back to him. That I know Dave Hyde was on the show last week just talking about how that is the big splash acquisition. And, I mean, really, there's a reason why he is a defensive coordinator. It's going to be paid like a head coach, that he's going to be the highest paid coordinator. It's because, I mean, he has that experience. He's done it with so many different groups of guys, and I mean, any team would want to have him leading the defense, especially now he's coming off of also having head coaching experience as well. So I really like how the pass rush can kind of now marry with if you have Jalen Ramsey locking things down on the back end, and you have Xavier Howard, if he has a bounce back season and gets those groins right going into the 2023 campaign, then if you have lockdown play like that, and then now Vic Fangio isn't going to be blitzing out of necessity. He made that clear in his first statement. So when I asked him about his general philosophy regarding the blitz. So now Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, I think they're going to have a lot more opportunities where they could have those pass rush wins at the line of scrimmage translate into some sacks and hits on the quarterback because of better coverage on the back end. You just kind of marry the pass rush with the coverage, and then I think that's when we're going to see everything come together for sure. And I like the Malik Reed addition as well, pairing him back up with Fangio. He didn't have a great 2022 season with the Steelers, but when he was last under Fangio, he was really good. Those previous two seasons, 21 and especially 2020, and then now also getting to work with Bradley Chubb again, I think he'll be real comfortable here in Miami with that familiar setting there.
One thing going back to David Long, the hamstring injuries.
Yes.
Is that a concern? It worries me to a small extent, but you know, I do agree, and me and Dave Hyde disagree on this point. When Chris Greer was asked about injuries, and he said, you know, we don't really worry about that, and you know, in a sense, that's what he said. In this case, I agree with Greer 100%. You're trying to win a Super Bowl this year and or next year. You're going for it. The foot is through the floor, and I understand David Long has had some hamstring issues the last couple of years. It's worth it. It's worth it. That's the mentality and the mindset that you have right now. Tua is an injury risk. Xavier is an injury risk. Teron Armstead is an injury risk. To a smaller extent, Bradley Chubb is an injury risk. Screw it. I'm putting them all on the field because I've assembled this team. I have this opportunity, and I'm going for it right now today. So I agree with Greer 100% in this instance, and the team's philosophy. Yeah, they might have an injury history, but if they can help me win now when I'm going for it, come on, join my squad. We're going to the Super Bowl. That's my thought.
Yeah, Greer has made it clear that he is not afraid to take on a player with an injury past, an injury history, injury risk. And sometimes you are able to get such quality talent at a price that you do because there is that injury factor. So if you bet on the guy that he is going to be able to stay healthy, then yeah, that's why you're able to get a Teron Armstead sometimes. David Long, sure, maybe some teams did shy away because of those hamstring injuries, but that's why you're able to get him at this kind of cheaper figure, kind of a bargain deal that you are able to get. Raheem Mostert, we know his injury passed, and that's why you're able to get him, although he is also now going up over 30 years old, and we know what that means at running backs. But, I mean, he just had a great season this past year where he approached 1,000 yards and was able to stay healthy. So, yeah, that's why sometimes you are able to get such talent at a price, and I think the Dolphins have shown that they are willing to take on that risk.
Yep. Okay. Secondary. Jalen Ramsey, welcome aboard. Nick Needham, come on back. Brandon Jones, come on back. Deshaun Elliott, welcome aboard. nice additions. I mean, really, really nice additions. You again, you hope that Xavier Howard can stay healthy. You're bringing back Cater Kohu. You're bringing back Jerome McKinley, like young guys who have good experience in McKinley's case, a little bit extensive experience in Cater Kohu's space, in Cater Kohu's case. So, I mean, the way that I'm looking at it right now at this early stage, you got X on one side, Jalen Ramsey on the other, and Cater Kohu and Nick Needham battle it out for the starting nickel. You're in good shape, and you got Brandon Jones and Javon Holland and Deshaun Elliott back there, three guys to battle it out for two. Well, I guess Javon is going to start, so I guess it's Brandon Jones and Deshaun Elliott. But again, great pickups, good talent, and you've got some options. You've got guys to choose among, and I think that's great. Last year their depth was good. This year the depth potentially could be even better. And I really like what's happening in the secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now at those spots, there's competition. And you mentioned, Jalen Ramsey X potentially on opposite ends. And Jalen Ramsey, he can be like he was in the Rams defense, even going back to under Staley, who's an understudy of Vic Fangio. So sort of a similar system, that star role. So he can be versatile on the back end as well. He can play in the slot. He can go and cover a tight end if that's what you really need in a game, instead of locking down an outside receiver. And maybe X takes on, maybe if you're playing a team that has one strong receiver, but their tight end is the biggest sort of receiving threat, you could go ahead and you have that option if you want to go put him on a tight end at times, mix up coverages. There'll be different zone schemes that will be implemented, giving quarterbacks different looks. Jalen Ramsey can move around, potentially even blitz off the nickel, play in the slot, cover on the boundary. So there's so much you can do with Jalen Ramsey that I absolutely love. Sort of that Swiss Army knife back there. But then in a traditional set, then yeah, you'll probably want X and Jalen Ramsey on the boundaries. And then now you have Cater Kohu, who has a vast experience at this point, who can play in that nickel, and he can play like a dog in there. I mean, he has that dog in him, where we've seen him receiver coming across the middle, or even a much bigger tight end or running back, and he'll go and put a hit on him, even at his size. So that's really impressive whenever I see that from him. And then now Nick Needham, you know what you got from him playing the nickel in the past, coming off the Achilles. So you hope that he can bounce back and then really give yourself some good competition there between Needham and Kohu to be that third corner. And obviously, you got to love now a couple of Texas guys, and I know you love that, Perk, and Deshaun Elliott and Brandon Jones now. Brandon Jones coming off the injury, so similar to the Needham formula there, where now you bring in some competition with him. That's going to push him as well, and then you're going to end up with someone really exceeding sort of maybe their expectations, and then coming away winning that battle. That's just what you hope, that you get the best out of both of those guys in each competition, play, whether it's the nickel corner or the strong safety role. And then now Elliott and Jones, one of them will get that spot, and maybe they can rotate in a lot. There's some dime packages that they could both work into. There's so much that you could do. So I really like what the Dolphins have done in the secondary.
Yeah, and by the way, I like the Texas guys from the state of Texas, not the University of. I went to Texas Arlington. You know my school, man. Tim McKyer, Bruce Colley, Lim Barney, Cliff Oak. Don't make me call roll. We stopped playing football in '83, and you still know the names. Kinda. Anyway, yeah.
Don't put words in my mouth. I don't think I know the name.
Texas Arlington, baby. Texas Arlington.
All right. So, and don't you forget it.
Remember, we're always in your mind. All right, look, let's go on to segment 3. And this is moves that we would like to see the Dolphins address in the offseason, moves we'd like to see them make in the offseason. And let me say this, Furones, this is just as a general disclaimer and a reminder. Look, we know that everybody that's acquired is not going to meet expectations, right? Free agents, I don't know what the percentage is. Maybe 50% of free agents live up to expectations. Maybe 40% of draft picks live up to expectations. I don't know, maybe something around that. But the point is, when you talk about adding players, and even when we look at the secondary, and we know that Nick Needham is coming back from injury and Brandon Jones is coming back from injury, both of them might not meet previous expectations or playing levels for whatever reason. So, when we talk about moves that the Dolphins have to make in the offseason, just keep in mind that these all aren't going to be the final answer, that you might have to upgrade mid-season or make another move. But this is what I would like to see done now, or addressed. Look, and these aren't in any particular order, but let's go offensive line, right tackle, left guard. We talked about this a little bit. I'd be fine to see Brandon Shell return. You've got Dan Feeney there for interior offensive line at guard and center. But I would like to see challengers at right guard, at left guard and right tackle. Challengers to the incumbent starters, Liam Eichenberg and Austin Jackson. Are those and the backup left tackle? So you got right tackle, left guard, backup left tackle. Those are the offensive line positions. And anything different that you would like to see addressed in the offseason?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah. So I think the interior offensive line, I think that was addressed with Dan Feeney. So I think you like him, and then you already know if you go by last year, Liam Eichenberg is the guy you're trying to start there. If not Feeney will compete, and then Robert Jones can also compete there as well. So never forget about him. Just like your Texas Arlington guys, you can't forget about Robert Jones. All right. So I do think there I like what the Dolphins have, and then if they bring back Brandon Shell, then I'd be okay with it. We mentioned some names earlier in segment one, whether George Fant from the Jets, Jermaine Elomanur. So there are some options. Right tackle still available. You aren't going to go all the way the route of like a Mike McGlinchey. I know that was just going to be too expensive, especially if you're prioritizing getting a lockdown corner like Jalen Ramsey to now really boost the defense. So I think that was a big splash personnel-wise that the team made. I always kind of felt it was going to be like a one big splash, maybe 1.5. On the high end, maybe 2, if they also figure out all these other like salary cap machinations to really make it work and maybe pull off a couple unexpected trades for some of the salaries that maybe the Dolphins wouldn't like to have on the books going forward. So, but. Yeah, if you find an economical choice, right tackle, you kind of need a swing tackle too, because Teron Armstead historically he's bound to miss time. I mean, last season he played hurt the whole time, and he was still a Pro Bowl left tackle. Every game that he did play, he was effective and meant so much to the offense. We saw how much better the offense run, regardless of which quarterback was in, when Teron Armstead was available as opposed to when he wasn't. So you want him to be healthy, but you do need a solid backup option. So, yeah, a tackle that could compete with Austin Jackson over there, and then also provide you some depth on the other side as well. The Dolphins did bring back Jaron Christian and who else? And Kendall Lamb, of course. So Kendall Lamb, we saw start at one point that January 1st game, penultimate game against the Patriots, and then he got hurt in that one too. So a lot of just injury and misfortune as well. We haven't heard anything about Eric Fisher. We know that was a name when the Dolphins brought him on, former number 1 pick, see if he could get it back going. But then he went down in practice as well. So you couldn't really ever see him in a Dolphins uniform outside of a few practices on the West Coast, I think. So for those of us that were out there in California at UCLA, seeing him very sparingly in a Dolphins practice uniform. I got a little excited when I saw that, but now that's not looking like it'll transcend to anything further. So, yeah, which you mentioned, basically.
Yep. And speaking of other things that need to be addressed, let's talk special teams very quickly. Danny Crossman, the special teams coordinator, is back. They've got a new punter, Jake Bailey, new punt returner in Braxton Berrios. Do you need a kickoff returner? Is Raheem Mostert going to handle that again? That's about it. That's about as far as I can go on special teams. I'm not sure if you need a new gunner or anything like that. But where do we stand? Because I liked Morstead. I thought you could have brought him back, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And do you need competition at kicker for Jason Sanders? I like Sanders, but I would like to see some competition. So you've got a new punter. Do you need competition at kicker? You've got a new punt returner. Do you need a new kickoff returner?
Okay, well, yeah, with Jason Sanders, he turned it on at the end of last year. We saw him make the clutch kick to send the Dolphins to the playoffs. We know he struggled at times. A lot of those were the 50-yard misses, but then he was able to hit the 50-yarder in the regular season finale, get the Dolphins into the playoffs. Maybe you bring in a young kicker just to make Jason Sanders feel the heat a little bit. He's got to convert on these, and then possibly that just ends up resulting in Sanders winning the competition, and then you cut the other guy. But and then the Jake Bailey acquisition, he's a guy who was, at one point an elite punter. He went on injured reserve last year. The back ailment, and I don't know if that also hurt him earlier in the year because his punting stats were really down before that happened. Obviously, he had that suspension by the team, so we'd have to dig into what really happened there. We know that his agent kind of contested the merit of that suspension. So what went on there? I'm assuming the Dolphins did their due diligence on that, and like the acquisition, and you hope for Dolphins fans' sake that they saw him as an upgrade over Thomas Morstead, and Morstead goes within the division. I thought he had a very good 2022 season. Now you don't have Trent Sherfield, so both parties involved in the infamous butt punt now no longer in Miami. That'll make some fans cry. I think Danny Crossman cried over seeing it happen. I know when I asked him if any bit of him was amused at all by it, in retrospect, considering that the Dolphins ended up winning the game, he said 0% amusement came from that 100% disappointment in his unit for that nearly costly error at the end of the Buffalo game. But now you don't have either of those guys. You mentioned Gunner. Man, if Matt Collins went to the Atlanta Falcons, we loved him in Miami. But I know with the season he had, I didn't see his contract numbers, but I imagine he got a little bit more than he used to earn. So, that's one thing there. And I love Braxton Berrios in the return game. I don't know. So I know his punt return abilities. So you mentioned if you need a kick returner. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe Berrios can contribute in that regard as well. And really ease things up for Raheem Mostert. But if you do have Mostert back there, you could start a series off with Wilson, pound them first. He's a physical runner. Mostert, the speedster, who has also kind of shown he can run with strength and force. So, there's options there.
Yeah, there's definitely options. So, okay, what else would you like to see the Dolphins address in the offseason? Is there backup defensive tackle or starter? I mean, you got Wilkins and you got Raekwon Davis and you got Zach Sealer there on the inside. Do you need to see more depth or 3 guys is pretty good. 4 guys would be even better. I think the Dolphins have done. I don't know that there are any real big pressing needs out there. There are some things that you would like to do, but something that you have to do. Off the top of my head, I think they've taken care of everything that they absolutely must do. Right? Am I missing something?
Yeah, for the most part, I would say we definitely have addressed it ad nauseum in this show. Is the right tackle is kind of still the one that you're looking at, a potential swing tackle. So for the most part, they've addressed, and you got to give the Dolphins credit. Chris Greer, assistant GM Marvin Allen, and Brandon Shore as well. Just they've worked quickly. That first week of free agency was just boom, 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 another move, and getting their guys into Miami and starting. It started with a bang on that Sunday right before free agency and trading for Jalen Ramsey. So that kind of got the ball rolling. And I know last year it was a lot of smaller moves the first week of free agency. Then it was, all right, big one, Teron Armstead. There's your big splash. He kind of waited a week before he made his decision, and then right after that, you're able to pull off the trade for Tyreek Hill that caught a lot of people by surprise, and then that really set the tone. Now, maybe the Dolphins take it easy. It's just maybe some roster filling moves to this point. Right now, they don't have a lot of salary cap space. Some more could be freed up with a Christian Wilkins extension potentially. So then kind of give you the immediate cap relief, and then sort of when you give them the extension, lock them up long term. But then also now you're spreading that out over years, and then giving yourself some immediate relief under the cap. And then also Byron Jones from that release. Don't forget that money comes in, that 13.6, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that range, comes through post June 1 because he was released with that designation. So maybe not right now, but if there are free agents that maybe stick around, and maybe there are some guys that want to come to Miami, and then they say, well, I'm going to wait till June because I know the Dolphins have this cap space freeing up. So let me just sit tight for now. I'm not in any hurry. Maybe for some more of the veteran guys that want to take some time or early in the offseason, aren't going to be so entrenched in that early offseason workout program, just want to get their body right and then maybe join a team later on in June. I think we've seen Melvin Ingram last year. He sort of did that as a later signing. So maybe some big vets that want to join a team that could be on the verge of doing something special. Why not look at the Dolphins? And then they're going to be freeing up that 13 plus in million in cap space once that Byron Jones release with the post June 1 designation comes through. That'll help sign a very small draft class and then maybe bring in some additional free agents later. So the draft class isn't going to take a lot of that money because it's 1 second, 1/3, and a 6th and a 7th. So, and then some undrafted guys as well. So that's something to look out for later in the offseason.
And by the way, Furones, when we talk about what the Dolphins need to add, let's kind of take a different look at what they've already done and what are the best units on the team right now, depth-wise. To me, cornerback, edge rusher, wide receiver. And I absolutely love that structure. I wish running back and quarterback were in the mix, but you can't have it all, right? You're good at those positions anyway. But I love that you're strong at corner, at edge, and at wide receiver. It's a very 2023 NFL structure, I think, and that's what that gives you different ways to control the game. And again, you're strong at quarterback with Tua. So you've got that. If it's not a top 3 overall position because of depth, which I don't think it is, because of depth, that's fine. Your starter is good. And you've got ways to stop people. You've got different ways to control the game. I like the way this Dolphins team is setting up. I really do.
Yeah, you mentioned it, the 2023 way of setting up a team. That's what the Dolphins have done here, prioritizing cornerback. And it's amazing when you just looked at cornerback right before free agency and before that Ramsey trade, and you said, okay, this is a position where the Dolphins really need to restock. It's amazing what Jalen Ramsey can do for you. Now, the way you look at corner is completely different when you say, oh, now you have Jalen Ramsey as a top corner. Potentially him and Xavier Howard, if X bounces back, they can form an elite tandem. And then you still have Kohu now taking another step in year 2 after getting so much experience as an undrafted rookie. Nick Needham comes back, Keon Crossan as he's now like your number 5 guy, and so on and so forth. So it's amazing how you could look at that. And the edge rushers, of course, now if Ogba can come back and also give you something off the edge, some pass rush. When you have Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, I think they're going to give you another level of it. Now we are just receiving confirmation also as well. We can now confirm definitely. Yeah, Andrew Van Ginkel is resigning with the Dolphins, so according to league sources. So that is what we're giving you here on Dolphins Deep Dive with Chris Perkins is the up to the minute updates here. So now Van Ginkel, maybe we don't know what's going to happen with Melvin Ingram, but they did bring in Malik Reed. We know. Mike McDaniel has said edge is his favorite position in all of football. Such an offensive-minded guy, so much of an offensive background, but it's fascinating. I think he probably understands how much a disruptive edge can really disrupt your offense, what you're trying to do. So I think he sees it from that standpoint, and that's why he is prioritized it. Has a first-round pick of Jalen Phillips, has traded another first-round pick for a top talent, Bradley Chubb. Andrew Van Ginkel now coming back, Malik Reed the addition. So, I think they are building it like this modern day team.
Yeah, and I love that. I absolutely love that. All right, Furones, let's get to our final segment here, and that's where do the Dolphins rank in the AFC East right now? We know this can change. We know this is very, at this moment. And we know Aaron Rodgers is not officially a New York Jet, although for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to say that he is. Where are the Dolphins? For me, I've got them up with Buffalo. And to me, Buffalo is a team that needs to lighten the load on Josh Allen a little bit. That's another team that I think could really use a running back. Josh's late game decision making, it's shaky, and it has been. We saw that up front. But we also saw that Josh can take over a game and that he can win it all by himself. But man, Josh does so much running, and he needs to be better at decision making. But I've got Buffalo slightly ahead because the Bills have some playoff experience. They've actually done it, but man, it's tough. I mean, we'll see how long Von Miller lasts there for Buffalo. Their window might be closing, right? Tremaine Edmonds is gone, and Tre'Davious White and Von Miller and Jordan Poyer have had some injury things. So I've got Buffalo slightly ahead of the Dolphins. Then in third is the Jets, because that Aaron Rodgers and Breece Hall combination, the running back who gave the Dolphins so much problems up there in New York, that's a good combination. Garrett Wilson at wide receiver. And the Patriots are still the Patriots. They're fourth right now, but they did beat the Dolphins in a late season game last year. They do still have Bill Belichick. Very, very good division. We'll see what else happens in the offseason. But I do think that Buffalo, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots will probably hold up into training camp and into the start of the regular season. But we'll see what else happens.
Yeah, I like what you got there. And, boy, this AFC East this year, I think it's going to look like what everyone thought the AFC West was going to look like last year. I think the AFC East will actually be that this year, where you have all four teams that can really compete. And really, I mean, all four teams did contend at least for a playoff spot. We know the Jets and Patriots ended up just out, and the Dolphins ended up with the 7 seed. But now you're seeing teams improve. When you're talking about the Patriots and you're kind of thinking of them as an afterthought and as the 4 team, then watch out, because you always know Bill Belichick has something up his sleeve. And now with Mike Gesicki, it'll be interesting to see what they can do with him. And that offense kind of starts to look a little bit like the Dolphins' offense of previous years, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki combination. So that'll be interesting to see how that actually develops over there. But yeah, Buffalo probably, you got to still feel at this point slight edge, but the Dolphins have a really good chance at overtaking them potentially for the division lead if Tua stays healthy. You have everything else really set up. The Bills kind of now with Tremaine Edmonds at linebacker going to the Chicago Bears, so they take a little bit of a hit. Now they are going to get the Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde safety combination back. Now they are another year older, and injuries have hit them. So what are you going to get out of that combination with them going into their 30s? So we'll see how that plays up. But yeah, you still have Josh Allen, you still have Stephon Diggs. And so now between Buffalo, yeah, I'd give them a slight edge. I saw some odds that had the Jets as the number 4 team in the AFC by odds to win the conference, assuming Aaron Rodgers goes. I'm not buying that. I think that's because a lot of these odds are based on better perception. Right. And so I think that's a lot of just anticipation of New York bias coming through that, Aaron Rodgers will, at age 40, will immediately make them some contender. I mean, to me, it looks a lot like the Brett Favre move of, what was that, 09 back then, or 08 season. 09, he went to the Vikings. So 08 and the Dolphins actually beat the Jets to win the division that year when Tom Brady was out and at 11-5 in that Week 17 game. So I wouldn't put the Jets ahead of the Dolphins by any stretch of the imagination. I understand why odds makers are doing that, because they assume a lot of money is going to be coming on the Jets, and the Jets do have a bright future. Now the thought maybe of just bringing in Aaron Rodgers has sort of like the Tom Brady going to Tampa effect of a few years ago. So I wouldn't put it quite there, but I do understand why some people on the outside could think that.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we'll see, man. These are good times if you're a Dolphins fan. Again, your team is making moves now. I don't have them as a Super Bowl contender quite yet. And I'll tell you one of the reasons. As we wrap up here, one story that I'm researching for this week, a column, is I have not found a team in Super Bowl history that went winless in December of one year and went to the Super Bowl the next year. So that's what the Dolphins are trying to do. They were winless last December. They're trying to go to the Super Bowl next year. 57 Super Bowls, 114 instances. It's never happened. Nobody has gone winless one year in December and then gone to the Super Bowl the next year. So is that significant to you? Because I was wondering about the Dolphins' winless December, and I kept thinking, it's very unusual, but does it mean anything historically? I don't know what it means. Maybe but that's very strange. Like if it had happened, a few times or whatever, 114 times, no team has been winless in December. So December football means something. What does it mean toward going to the Super Bowl the following year? I don't know, but that's more than coincidence. Is that anything? And the reason that I brought it up and the reason that I would write about it is not to take a shot at the Dolphins at all. It's that I hope the front office realizes this, and I hope the front office addresses this, because I don't know if that's a coaching issue, a depth issue, what it is, but there's something about it. Is that significant to you, or is that just 114 straight? Is that coincidence, or is that significant?
I think it just speaks to the rarity of having a winless December, because when it happened and we were looking at the stats even for the Dolphins, then what was it? It was only the 1993 season, right? Is it? Yeah, where it happened previously in Dolphins history, or at least that's the last one. Yeah, it wouldn't happen, but before then, unless it happened in some of their
the 1-15 season, they won in December.
Right, they won that one game in December. So yeah, I mean it's a very rare instance to have a winless December, regardless. And let alone maybe a lot of teams that have gone winless in December, they weren't playoff teams even that year. The Dolphins were 8-3, competing, having a chance at that 1 seed, and then had just those losses stack up with at San Francisco, at LA, at Buffalo. We knew that was going to be a tough stretch, but then Tua didn't have his best games in that back-to-back West Coast swing. And then Buffalo competed, but obviously those kind of elements not typical for Dolphins to win in historically. And then have they had good elements in New England. They had I think it was warmer January 1st in New England than it was in the Christmas Day game against the Packers. Right. But sort of that wacky aspect of that nuance that you have your second coldest home game ever in that game against the Packers at home. And then and you're playing a cold weather team, so you didn't really get the advantage there. Maybe that's kind of like the karmic reaction of, you also had the heat help you so much early in the season against New England and especially Buffalo. So then it ends up coming back to bite you, where you don't get that advantage against a cold weather team late. So a lot of things went into that winless December, and it's just it will be a tough thing to do. I don't think a lot translates from one December into late in the season the next year. So I think if you or I were to ask that question early in the season, even late in the season, hey, did you know that no team that was winless in December the previous year ever won a Super Bowl? If the Dolphins are making the playoffs and about to play a playoff game, if we threw that at them, they'd be like, that means nothing to me. So, I don't think it'll translate too much. I think it's just one thing. It's just very rare for it to happen. And, hey, these firsts end up happening. We never saw a team host a Super Bowl by having the Super Bowl in their stadium that year and then reaching it. And then it ends up happening with the Buccaneers a couple of years ago. And then some years, 3 years earlier, the Vikings were 1 win away from doing it, but they lost to the Eagles when Minnesota was hosting the Super Bowl. So things like that, these firsts that never happen, eventually sometimes they do happen.
Tampa and the Rams both won, right? In their
so it ended
in their
up
home stadiums,
back-to-back seasons, right?
Back-to-back
after never happening before.
Right. So here's a list of the teams that were winless last December. By the way, the 93 Dolphins, when they were winless in they did bounce back. Here's the teams that were winless last December. The Washington Commanders, they finished 8-1. They were winless in December. New York Jets, they finished 7-10. They finished on a 6-game losing streak. Tennessee, they finished 7-10. They finished on a 7-game losing streak. Indianapolis, They were 4-12-1. They finished on a 7-game losing streak. Arizona 4-13, finished on a 7-game losing streak. Chicago 3-14. They finished on a 10-game losing streak. So it's just a bizarre. I mean, 114 straight times. That's the only thing that really got me. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to affect the Dolphins' 2023 season. But it's just I just found it a very bizarre kind of occurrence. So we'll see what happens. In the meantime, congrats to the Canes, baby. The men and the women in the Sweet 16. We love to see that. You're a Cane. I covered the Canes 97 to 2000. So I'm happy for the Canes. I would be happier if UT Arlington was in the Sweet 16, but that's a whole other conversation. So, all right, your Miami Dolphins doing very well in the offseason. That's your boy Furones. I'm your boy Perk. Tune in next week, Dolphins Deep Dive, noon Tuesday.